Let me get myself right. And welcome to another episode of Ron's Library and Ideas. This is Ron. This is day 3 of going live to increase my audience and share my worldviews with you guys. Now, the world that we live in is fundamentally flawed. That's going to be the discussion for tonight. This world that we find ourselves in was made in an incorrect manner, and that's why we see all the suffering that we see in the world. It's interesting because it comes to mind, well, was the world messed up because of humans? Is it our fault that things exist the way that they do down here? Are we to blame for all the troubles that the world is facing? Or is it something that's more insidious? Is there something larger going on that we know nothing about? Have you ever seen the movie Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon? It's an old 80s movie. And, growing up as a kid, when I first saw it, I was young. Might have been 5 or 6 or something like that. And my first time watching it, I was the ring bearer in my cousin's wedding. And it came on television, and I sat down and watched it before I went off to that movie. Went off to the wedding. And Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, it has everything that a kid could want in the movie. There was fighting, it was kung fu, he had a villain, there was a beautiful woman in the story. But it wasn't until I got older that I realized just how deep that movie is. Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon actually tells pretty much the same story as The Matrix. Remember, in The Matrix, that came out when I was like in middle school, but you have the main character, Neo, who gets told very early on in the movie that he is the one. But Neo doesn't believe it for himself. He has to go through this whole movie, go through all these trials and tribulations in order to realize, oh snap, I am the one that gives me powers, that gives me abilities that other people don't have. That same story is told in Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. Opening scene of the movie, he's doing a training montage. And training montages are always popular, well, in movies and television shows. You like to see what the main character is going through to get to his current level. Like we like to watch Goku in Dragon Ball Z go through his training. How did he learn the Kaioken? What he did on the way to Namek, training 100 times Earth's gravity in order to get ready to fight Frieza. So anyway, at the beginning of Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, you have Bruce Leroy training, and his master is shooting arrows at him. And the goal is knock away all the arrows that have the red banner on it and to catch the one that has the blue banner, right? So, he's fighting, training, master shoots an arrow at him, foul, knocks it away. His master shoots another arrow at him, foul, knocks it away. This goes on like, I think 6 times, and it's on the 7th one that he reaches up and he catches the arrow that has the blue ribbon on it. And, he's looking shocked and surprised. And the master walks up to him and is like, how did you know that that was the right arrow? And he says, I don't know. I just knew. And then his master snatches off this banner that he had on his chest and said, I am no longer your master. You have touched the final level. That ability to know without knowing. And, Bruce Leroy doesn't understand because he said, yo, master, you told me when I reached the final level, I would have a glow about me. I'll be able to do all these amazing things. And his master's saying, yo, you caught that arrow by your intuition alone. That's knowing without knowing how you knew. That's very powerful. We live in a world where we put so much emphasis on the intellect. Like it's three eyes. I learned this from Brother Panic. It's intuition, imagination, and intellect. And in the world that we live in right now, the current people who are running society, let's see, what's up, man? They put a lot of emphasis on intellect. But intellect is actually the lowest of those three things. You know, Albert Einstein, one of the smartest men who ever lived, according to them, he said imagination is more important than intellect because it's with your imagination that you're able to dream up new ideas to begin with. But intuition, that ability to know without knowing how you know, that really is the final level. You just know some things. So back to Bruce Leroy. So his master sees that, all right, well, you don't understand yet exactly what you need to understand. So I'm going to give you a dummy mission to go on so you can go and have whatever experience that you need to have in order to locate the master. Long story short, he goes through a lot of trials and tribulations and realizes that the master that he was looking for was right there inside of him. Now, earlier I said Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon and The Matrix tell a very similar story. So both of them involve a woman. And this is very important, men and women, that you pay attention to this. Your woman can unlock things in you by pointing things out to you that you weren't necessarily aware of. So I'm a little boy watching this movie, and there's a scene where Bruce Leroy saves Lisa. Her real name is Vanity. Well, her stage name is Vanity. She was a singer for Prince. I think her real name is like Denise something. But anyway, this is a beautiful woman. And, you know, as a little boy, I'm sitting there watching like, oh, damn, she fine. But he saves her from these bad guys or whatever. And he tells her, well, I'm on the search for a master. And she said, you sure look like a master to me. And the way she said that, I don't know, that did something to me as a little boy. I was like, oh, I like the way she said that. But anyway, as he's fighting that last bad guy in the movie, showing up and getting beat up. He's having these flashbacks of all these things that he's experienced in the movie. And the first flashback that he saw while he's getting his head dunked in water and Bruce Leroy asking him, yo, who's the master? He raises up and he sees Vanity telling him, yo, you sure look like a master to me. It's because of the words that she spoke to him that he realized, oh snap, I'm the master. Same thing happens in The Matrix. Neo gets shot by the agent. He's on the ground laying there about to die. And Trinity whispers in his ear, yo, when I went and spoke to the Oracle, she told me that the man I fell in love with will be the one. So you see, Neo, you can't be dead because I'm in love with you. And that's when Neo opens his eyes and he realizes, oh snap, I'm the one. It comes down to that belief in yourself. And again, as I'm saying these things to you, it's almost like I'm talking to y'all, but I'm talking to myself as well. Because that one energy, the one, it's within all of us. It's within me. It's within you. You just have to convince yourself that it's there. So Bruce Leroy, he realizes, oh snap, I'm the master. Neo realizes, oh, I'm the one. And then they proceed to go out and kick some major butt. Now, this is something that you have to know for yourself. Other people can tell you, but if you don't realize it yourself, it's not going to mean anything. In Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, the bad guy in that movie is Show Nuff. In the whole movie, he's walking around asking, who's the master? And all his followers say, Show Nuff. And he does that the whole time. Like he needs that reassurance. And he was convinced of it. Convinced to the point to where he had his own glow. He had a red glow. And that's symbolic of your root chakra. The root chakra is associated with the color red. So he had a red glow. But when Bruce Leroy realized that no, it was him who was the master, he had a golden glow. And his was golden at a higher level because he didn't need anyone else to tell him. So if you're just now tuning in, hello from North Korea. Hey, hello to you too. Be careful. I didn't know y'all was allowed to get on YouTube in North Korea. Man, more power to you, man. Be safe. Um, so what we're talking about tonight is that the world is fundamentally flawed. It was made in a flawed manner. And I brought up that story of Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon and The Matrix because The Matrix is a Gnostic story. If you don't know, the Gnostics were a group of latter-day Egyptians who held the worldview that, you know what? Whatever created this place did so in a flawed sense. Like, this can't be a true creation of God. Look at all the horrible things that can happen down here. This is really a place where you can be eaten alive by something. And, we find different ways to rationalize it. Like, well, that's just the circle of life. But if you're dealing with an all powerful God, why make a reality where the things down here have to eat to survive? If you think about it as a video game, somebody has to program in the video game that, okay, if the characters don't consume this piece or this, what you call it, this item in the game, then they're going to lose health and die. That's something that has to be written in. So the fact that we have to consume things, that's something that was written in to the game or written into the nature of this reality. And you know what's interesting? I didn't hear about the Gnostics until much later on in my life when I was on my journey of consciousness and I started studying. It never came up in church, never came up in school, apparently. But that's one of those things they don't want to bring up because it really changes your worldview. You start to see, well, wait a second. What is this place that I find myself living in? Is there a way to fix this? And this is Ron's Library and Ideas. I like to turn you guys on to new books. One of the best books that I've ever read about Gnosticism, I got it up here, and it's simply called Gnosticism, New Light on the Ancient Tradition of Inner Knowing. And this is by Stephen Holier. Definitely a book that I think y'all should go out and get. And I'm going to read some things from that to you just to give you a better idea of this idea of Gnosticism in the world we find ourselves in. So the back of it says, the Greek word gnosis means knowledge. The Gnostic worldview developed alongside Judeo-Christianity or Judeo-Christianity 2,000 years ago. But while Christianity emphasizes faith, Gnosticism emphasizes a state of consciousness for knowing God directly, an aim which mainstream Christianity finds heretical. Stephen Holier's comprehensive overview is an unfolding historical drama filled with passion, political intrigue, martyrdom, and mystery. It also reveals Gnosticism as the indigenous mystical tradition of the West. We learn about the Gnostic view of the divine and the manifest world, good and evil, in the essence of the human soul. The Gnostic Christ as the messenger of light and the guide to sacred mysteries. Sophia, the Gnostic archetype of feminine wisdom. The scriptures, sacraments, and rituals of Gnostic religions, such as the Mandean, holding secret wisdom traced back to John the Baptist. So what's interesting, if you look at this cover, I don't know who drew this originally, but this is the man sticking his head outside of what looks like the firmament and seeing true reality. You'll notice that there's a song about Ezekiel seeing the wheel in Christianity. You see that wheel right there. Notice you have the stars and the sun and the moon inside of the firmament. People talk a lot of trash about the flat earth and just that entire concept. But the flat earth idea molds into this idea of Gnosticism, of us being in a place that physically we can't get out of, but our soul can escape from. Just interesting concepts. And something else about the flat earth, if it was such a ridiculous idea, well, why would they spend so much time trying to dissuade us from even thinking about it? Why would they want us to think, well, that's just a ridiculous idea? If it was truly ridiculous, in my opinion, they would pay it no mind. But now that we have social media and people can put out their own information, it's like, well, ooh, I can look into these things for myself. So let's see what it says about Gnosticism in here. Oh, again, this idea of knowing directly versus having to rely on faith. Uh, if you go back and look at that movie, The Book of Clarence, one of the key things in that movie was knowing is better, knowledge is better than faith. You can have a direct experience with God, with the all, without having to go through something else. You don't have to rely on someone else. I always thought it was a ridiculous notion that the Catholics teach that no one can directly talk to God, that you have to go through the priest and go through the Pope. Now, maybe I have a misunderstanding of that, but that's how it seems to me. Like the Pope is the only one who has a direct connection or direct communication with God, and you have to go and confess your sins to the priest. Just all types of what I consider to be ridiculous, but a lot of people think it's not ridiculous. You know, they go to confessional to this day. I don't know. It's interesting. Uh, it's a very good system of keeping people in line. I get you to come to me and tell me the things that you did wrong, and I'll tell you what kind of punishment you're going to get. Uh, yeah, that's not something that I would buy into it. Let's see. The monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, in their mainstream manifestations have placed much emphasis on faith. I believe it's the central affirmation of much of the conventional religious mind. In contradiction, the Gnostic mind aspires to and eventually attains not faith, but a certain interior knowing that liberates one from unconsciousness and eventually transports one beyond the bounds of manifest existence itself. This state very likely has certain advantages over mere faith or belief. To most people, faith means having faith in someone else's faith. It's like having that direct experience is better than having to rely on somebody else's word. And the example that I always use is just think about having sex. Before you had sex, it was just a concept to you. Somebody, they tried to explain it to you. They said, well, it's warm, it's wet, kind of feels like this, kind of feels like that. And they try to put it into words. But until you have sex for yourself, and it's like, oh, okay, this is what sex is. Well, God is a lot like that. They can describe it to you, but until you experience it for yourself, that's a totally, completely different experience. So getting back to this idea that we live in a flawed world, the Gnostics teach that what they call the demiurge is the false god that created the world that we exist in. And he created it because he wanted to have something to rule over. He saw something above him, an existence above him, that he wasn't a part of. So he made the physical world in the astral realm. And he made some animals down here to worship him and to have control over. But it was the one true God who decided to have mercy and send our souls down here, or put his spirit in our bodies in a sense. And that's what we make, excuse me, that's what makes this place have some type of divine grace. It's the fact that we have souls, or we are a soul, operating through this vessel to make some sense of this crazy world. Now, everything down here happens in cycles, right? So we've had golden ages on this planet before. We lived through periods of things that were so supremely beautiful and great that we can't even conceptualize it truly. But just how spring turns into summer, summer turns into fall, fall turns into winter, so too goes our civilizations. Anything that has a beginning must also have an ending. They said that in the Matrix. So as good as we can make this place, eventually it's going to turn back into something bad. And it just happens over and over and over again, just different variations. So what we're seeing now, we're going through an awakening. We're coming to a new level of knowledge and inner knowing. And there's people who call themselves controlling the planet who are in line with the demiurge, at least from my understanding. They don't want to see this thing turn back into something positive. So they do the best that they can to keep us on a negative place. And they do that by all the lower emotions. They create the conditions that they create, thank you. Somebody said I'm in my bag with this one. They create the conditions that will bring about these lower emotions. That's why you see so much like violence in television. Um, you see so much like pornography, sexual deviance being pushed to the forefront. All that type of stuff is something that's going to bring about negative things happening. So even let's talk. I don't know if I can say pornography on here without it getting flagged by uh, YouTube. Pornography is one of those things that's used as a weapon. Sex is a weapon if not handled properly. And no good has ever come from a man or woman not being in control of their sexual nature. And I think about all the things that's pushed on us from such an early age to get us to that point. Like me personally, I got exposed to porn at a very early age from television. This is going to show my age, but like Cinemax at a certain time at night, Cinemax would show their softcore porn movies. Like the movie would have a plot and then they'll show some type of sex scene. And as a little boy, this was like, oh snap, what is this? So I'd be downstairs watching it with my finger on the back button on the television because I knew if my parents caught me watching this, oh, it's going to be a problem. So ready to hit the last button, put it back on like cartoons or something, right? And I don't think my parents were aware that this kind of stuff was coming on television. But now, if you think about it, porn is such an everyday thing. Like, it almost seems odd if you say you don't watch porn. And that was one of my goals for the latter half of this year. I stopped watching pornography completely. This probably started sometime in November, and the goal is to go through all of 2025 with no pornography. And that's something that'll be completely new to me because I've been exposed to it for such a long time. It seems like such a natural thing. Who doesn't want to watch that? But Phil Valentine, he almost ruined, well, he did ruin it in the sense. Once he brought up the fact that he's like, yo, it's like y'all are training yourselves to be cuckolds. Like, think about it. You're watching another man give pleasure to a woman and you're getting sexual excitement out of that. And I never thought of it that way, but when I thought about it, I was like, damn, that's kind of right. That's weird, right? So then, all right, so maybe you'll justify to yourself, well, I'll just watch where it's nothing but women. But it's still pushing you into your lower nature and making you not in control of yourself, right? So all of this leads to a lower nature type of thing happening and you inviting bad things to happen to yourself. Like, I want to be successful in life. And I know that has to come with a certain amount of discipline. So this is me disciplining myself to do things that's going to keep me on the right path. Because think about it. What good has ever come for somebody being out of control sexually? It only leads to deviance. It only leads to trouble. Think about how many relationships have been messed up, families that have been split apart, uh, men raising babies that aren't their own. All types of bad things happen when you're not in control of yourself sexually. So that's just what I think about it. Let me know what you think. um, go and have your own experience, do your own studying. Like even looking into the history of how porn was allowed or corn was allowed into the country. That's like, oh, okay, so they really are using this as a weapon. Maybe I'll speak on this in more detail later on. But a good source for you to go and listen to, believe it or not, Candace Owens has been speaking about this, excuse me, and bringing up some very valid points. And I know as a black person, you may think, well, I'm never going to listen to Candace Owens at all. But keep in mind what they say: a broken clock is right 2 times a day. So you can always find wisdom from different places. Like I said in my live stream last night, you need to go and look at the opposing view just to see what's going on to give yourself a better perspective. So if Candace Owens is a person that, just disagrees with you, go and check out some of the things that she's talking about. And don't listen to your ego, listen to your spirit. See if your spirit is telling you something that's true. Because when I, decided, okay, well, I'm not going to watch porn, I'm not going to watch corn anymore. The ego was saying, well, why? But my spirit was saying, yeah, you're on the right track. Anyway, what are we talking about? Okay, the flawed state of the world. Uh, Again, this book, Gnosticism, New Light on the Ancient Tradition of Inner Knowing. And there's a bunch of things that I have highlighted in this book. And let's see if I can find something else that, all right, so check this out. Humans live in an absurd world that can be rendered meaningful only by gnosis. Even many of the gods are illusory entities made real by the human mind for its own limited purposes. It's your mind that makes this real. They said that in the Matrix as well. That's another reason why the powers that be do so much to try to convince you of things. They try to convince you of their worldview. They tell you what's possible and impossible. They tell you what you can do and what you cannot do, what's possible for someone who looks like you or someone who comes from your background. You can't give somebody that type of power over yourself. You have to decide for yourself, what do you want your world to be? What do you want your reality to be? Okay. The proposition that the human mind lives in a largely self-created world of illusion from which only the enlightenment of a kind of gnosis can rescue it. Remember, gnosis means knowledge. The Upanishads say that the world is God's Maya or illusion through which he deceives himself. Certainly, this could easily have been written by Valentinus or another Gnostic. According to the teachings of Buddha, the world of apparent reality consists of ignorance, impermanence, and the lack of authentic selfhood. Now, one of the Hindu myths say that it's either Brahma or one of the guys is asleep on the cosmic ocean, and he's dreaming up reality. So right now, the ultimate supreme God is asleep, and what we exist in is his dream. So when you go to sleep at night and you're dreaming, which part of the dream isn't you? It's your mind that's making all of it. You're populating the dream with your subconscious mind. Go and check out the movie Inception by Christopher Nolan. They deal with this concept pretty heavily. And you know what? I need to do a series on Christopher Nolan's movies because Christopher Nolan is let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, he's into this information. A lot of the movies, the underlying themes that he's made, even his brother Jonathan Nolan, they make movies and television shows that deal with Gnostic themes. Westworld, great TV show that was all about Gnosticism. Um, Go and check that out for yourself. Let's see. What else? Let's go to the beginning of this. Let's see if I can find. All right, so check this out. Gnostics, both ancient and modern, agree with the Buddhists that suffering is an existential, manifestation of evil in the world. All other creatures also experience fear, pain, and misery. As St. Paul points out, all creation groans and travails in pain. The Gnostics see this imperfect state of the world as the result not of original sin, but of an original flaw. Put in slightly more abstract terms, evil is part of the fabric of the world we live in. If there is a creator of this reality, then surely this creator is responsible for all the evil in it. Remember when I said there's certain things that has to be programmed into reality as like a programmer making a video game. He has to write these things in there. So the fact that we have to consume something to continue our existence down here, that was done on purpose. So the demiurge is who the Gnostics say created this world that we live in. And he wants to create beings down here that he can feed off of their emotions. And emotions like fear, anger, jealousy, hate, lustfulness. These are all emotions that that taste good to the demiurge in the things that serve him. So he's going to create a world where you see more of those emotions. So love, gratitude, um, hopefulness, all these are emotions that are positive, and it's much harder for them to feed off of because it vibrates so high. So again, when I was talking about pornography, um, by having yourself be sexually uncontrolled, sexually undisciplined, you're going to go out there and make babies unplanned. Those unplanned babies come into the world and they have a harder existence because, well, their parents didn't put enough thought into making them. You got broken households. But that serves the demiurge because, well, now I have more things to feed off of. You get it? I gave you this nature of enjoying sex so you can create more things for me to feed off of. It's like being on a farm. If I'm the farmer, well, I need these animals to be down here making more animals so I can eat them. Same thing. The Gnostic asks the great question: is this flawed creator truly the ultimate true and good God? Or is he a lesser deity who is either ignorant of a power beyond himself or is conscious of a divine authority superior to himself but decides to usurp the position of the highest deity? The Gnostics answered that this creator is obviously not the true ultimate God, but is rather a demiurgos, a secondary deity. The demiurge is the originator of evil and imperfection in the world. You know, to me, it all comes down to that. Like, all right, so what exactly are we doing down here? Like, what's the meaning of life? People have been pondering that for a long time. And when I came across this information, it was like, okay, things are starting to make sense. And to me, one of the greatest things that I can do is to share this knowledge with you guys so it can spark something within you. Because if it's true, your soul is going to recognize it and it's going to whisper to you. You know, Somebody asked Phil Valentine the question. Yo, check out Phil Valentine as well. Somebody asked Phil Valentine the question, well, how do you know if it's your ego speaking or if it's your soul speaking to you? Phil Valentine said, yo, the ego speaks to you and it's very loud. It's almost like a yelling in your ear. Versus your soul, your higher self speaks to you in a whisper. You know, every time you do something and it turns out bad and you say, man, something told me not to do that. If you think about that, something told me, it was like a whisper. It was like sitting back, like, hey, I'm gonna do that for you. It's always a whisper. Our chore, our task is to figure out or learn how to discern between that loud voice and that whisper that says, yo, maybe you should look into this. Check it out for yourself, see what it is. Versus the loud ego is saying, man, nah, that's bullshit. Or you know what? I completely agree with that. You have to make the ego subservient to your higher self. The ego is supposed to work for you, not the other way around. Let's see, it's another comment. Which is why they're promoting casual encounters and detachment from love. We become factories. Agreed. Correct. They said sex got easier to get, and that made love harder to find. Just think about the state of the world we find ourselves in now, man. Like the concept of OnlyFans. You know, women putting themselves out there, well, men and women, but just putting yourself on the internet to make money and not thinking about the long-term consequences of that. I think about the young men who are going to go to school and word's going to get out, yo, so-and-so mama got an OnlyFans. Like, what? You know how embarrassing that is? You know how emotionally scarring that is for a child when you're like, damn, my friends know my mom got an OnlyFans and they subscribe to it. Like the kind of trash that will let kids talk to other children. That's not a good thing. These casual encounters. And you know, when I look back over my life, I can see how my higher self or God has been helping me to avoid a lot of these pitfalls. Like I'm a Scorpio, right? So Scorpios, we have a number of reputation things about us, but one of it is our highly sexual nature. Um, by me growing up being the smart kid, uh, being you know, when I started wearing glasses, that's when people started calling me a nerd, right? But because of that, I had a late start when it came to having sex. Like, I kind of had a late start with a lot of things, but that helped me avoid, you know, just really just being out here and going crazy. Because I can see how, had I just been out here, you know, exploring, having sex at a very early age, how it's hard to pull yourself back from that. People get started on this stuff and it's hard to break that habit. You know, they've been doing it for so long and it's like, well, I'm going to keep doing it. So now you look up, you got a bunch of kids, you don't have somebody helping you raise them. And you know, children need two parents ideally. Like, it can be done by yourself, but that's not the ideal situation to have. uh, so I say all that to say, you know, try to take an objective look at your life and the consequences of your choices. You know, we like to put the blame, well, I only did this because of this, I only did this because of this. At a certain age, you got to realize, well, you know what, I'm making choices. Now I have to make better choices so I can get a better result. And your ego is going to make that hard to do. Your ego wants to protect you in a sense. Now, don't get me wrong, you need your ego because it's your ego that keeps you safe. But that safety also pushes away new ideas. Um, New ideas are uncomfortable if you're not used to it. If you're not used to saying, you know what, I was wrong about that. Let me find out something else. You know, that's a difficult thing. So again, that's another instance of where you have to make your ego work for you. Let me read some more of these comments. Yes, the kids are brutal with the tease. I think children have always had, they could bring up a level of cruelty in like their jokes. Um, your mind will not understand real affection, nor will you comprehend unconditional love because you've been transactional with your body. Yeah, I can see that. Um, Even the fact that they push so much of this idea for these young women to view sex as purely transactional. Well, if you have a certain amount of money, you can give me a certain amount of things. I'll give you my body. That in turn makes men see, okay, well, why should I respect her or view her as something divine when all it takes to have her is some money? Doesn't matter how I treat her. Doesn't matter my character. If I have enough money, I can have this woman. It cheapens the entire experience and it leads to this divide between men and women. We need each other. We bring balance to this place, man and woman together. Uh, you need both of us. Um, like if I woke up one day and there were no women on the planet, my fiance go on, it's just men. You know what I would do? I would take a plane and take it up into the sky and like go skydiving, but with no parachute, right? I'm gonna jump out and either I'm gonna figure out how to fly right then and there, or I'm gonna hit the ground and that's gonna be it. Cause what is life without your opposite? What is life without, that balance? And they're really pushing this idea of men versus women. Like it's so many, they really want you to believe that there's so many trash men and trash women out there that it's impossible to find somebody. That's not true. As you work on yourself, you're going to attract the person that you need in your life. When I found my fiance, I was in the midst of my spiritual journey. I was learning more about myself. Um, and God, the universe tossed me that alley oop. And now, look, I'm getting married to the love of my life. That's a beautiful thing. But it happened as I was working on myself. You and your partner deserve each other at your best. Um, you're not always going to be at your best, but as you strive for the highest. That's something that I learned from one of my fraternities. Strive for the highest. Keep going. There's always room to improve. There's always more to know. You have to be willing to learn, to do some research. This goes for men and women. And you learn all these things. Like I read these books to, tap into my intellect. But after you learn so much stuff, after a while, your intuition is going to kick in, and some things are just going to become obvious to you. There's going to be an inner knowing. You're going to be able to hear somebody say something and know off bat, yeah, I think that's bullshit. Or you know what? Sounds like there's something to that. Let me check into that some more. That's the power of utilizing your intuition by tapping into your imagination and your intellect. They all feed into each other. Let's see. Not skydiving with no parachute. Yeah. We also assume we need to have it all together and earn a level of love. So, of course, transactional relating will fit that sort of mindset. Yeah. Yeah, we're always going to be to a point to where we're improving. Perfection is something that you strive for, but you never quite hit while you're in the physical. Because honestly, once you get to be perfect, what else is there to do? What else is there to do? There's a scene in one of the Avengers movie where Hawkeye was talking about he played golf. He was like, yo, I played 18, I shot 18. There's nothing else to do. If you're not a golfer, that means he played 18 holes and he hit 18 holes in one. So it's like, oh, you've mastered golf. Like you got the ball in the hole with one shot 18 times in a row. All right, why play anymore? We like competition Men, we like competition because it is that proving ground. It's all right, I want to achieve a goal, and this person is trying to stop me from achieving that goal. So let me problem solve my way into getting what I want. That's fun for us. So, well, I've been on here for 45 minutes now, so I should probably bring this to a close. I appreciate you guys, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in and listening to me speak on in the ramble. Hopefully, you got something from this. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and share this. Um, Let me know what you think about these books. I think I want to make a habit of this, reading more out of these books that I have in my library to spark something inside of you. Let's open in that RAM and see if I find something versus reading. All right. It's the last thing I'll leave you with before I leave. All right. All Gnostics have always differed from the majority of humankind, not only in details of belief, but also in their fundamental view of existence and its purpose. The assumption that the world is good and that our involvement with it is somehow beneficial is a favorite of most people most of the time. True, Christianity has, in a rather Gnostic way, recognized this world as a vale of tears, and so have other spiritual traditions, most particularly Buddhism, which has as its cardinal tenet that earthly life equals suffering. Yet most religions eventually soften their stance somewhat and make concessions in regard to the darkness of the world. Gnostics, however, would not make such concessions. And while the Gnostic schools of the early centuries were rather short lived and were confined to the cultural elite, I'm going to try to pronounce this word the correct way. Manichaeism was different. It was a world religion for many centuries with a large following, an elaborate hierarchy, monks, priests, a liturgy, and sacred scriptures. All right, so long story short, the Gnostics aren't going to make any kind of excuse about why the world is the way it is. They're giving you a realistic view, like, yo, we live in something that is fundamentally flawed. Our job is to find that Christ consciousness within and bring some light into this world while we have time down here. So that's my goal. Let me share some light that I'm finding with you guys. And hopefully, us sharing this light together, our vibration is something that would change this into a more peaceful place. But understand, as peaceful as you make this, it's a cycle. Everything cycles around eventually. So thank you all for tuning in. Hit the like button. And I'll see y'all in the next episode of Ron's Library and Ideas. Peace.